Okay, these video lessons are designed to help you go through the medicine booklet. So we're just going to jump straight in. Straight away you see a contents page and each exam style for paper 1. The first topic that we'll be doing is the Middle Ages, so that's time period of 1250 to 1500. The first lessons of the first page even of this booklet is very simple. All it does is give you a little bit of background about what the key themes are and just a kind of understanding about time frame. So the whole point of this medicine and health through time unit is you'll be looking at 3 specific things, and that is the cause of disease, the prevention of disease, and the treatment of disease. Now the whole point of this course is to really understand how medicine has changed over time. So the 2 things that we're really looking at here is continuity, so what has stayed the same over the time period. So the time periods that we study are Middle Ages, the Renaissance period, the 18th and 19th century, which is the industrial period, and the 20th century, which we call the modern period. It just goes through some key themes here that you just have to read just to have an idea about what medicine through time actually means. So a few things to just get familiar with. So the idea of surgery is treating illness or injuries through incisions or manipulation of the body, especially with instruments. 2 very important words to understand the course: the anatomy, so how the body is actually structured, and the physiology, so what functions parts of the body perform. And it's really important to have a grasp of what those 2 things are, because we study through this course how the anatomy is incredibly important, and that progress of understanding the anatomy. When we think medicine through time, especially under the current climate of coronavirus, we should have a fuller understanding of what medicine through time actually means and the factors of that. We have a think about public health, so the health of the population as a whole, especially in terms of what government does to improve it. Now, when we think about medicine, there are factors leading to the progression or the continuation of medicine. And those things range for each time frame, and at every end of each sort of area, so each topic, we will go through what factors of medicine applies to that part of the course. Just a few things to have a think about is thinking about when did things actually progress, so over time. When was there continuity, so when did things stay the same? When did things regress, so when did they get worse and why? And if there was change, did it occur very quickly, or was that a slow sort of process? So lesson 1 is just giving you an idea of that general understanding of what medicine and health through time actually means. And so the whole point of this course is just really to understand the big story of medicine. We're living through a time in which that is very much relevant to us right now. So hopefully, as we go through the course, it's something that you can grasp easily. So lesson 2, our story starts first in the Middle Ages. So we, from now on, we have our homework as an online homework. So for the following lessons, you would have a homework sent out to you by your teacher, and you would be expected to fill that in online. Obviously, if you do not have access to online equipment, then you'd have to talk to your teacher about that. So when we think about the Middle Ages, we have to rewind a bit, and here we're thinking about life in England and life under the Roman Empire. So we think about a time in which medicine was going through progression. So under the Romans, there was key things that they did that was clearly progression for medicine. And when we think about progression for medicine, especially in this early time, we think about how sanitary were things. How well did knowledge spread? What was money used for? So for this first activity, what you have to do is you have to look at the inner boxes, which are pieces of knowledge about what the Romans did in their empire. And all you have to do is connect it to the outer boxes. So an outer box would be an impact of one of the inner boxes. For example, if we were to pick the number 1 over here, so the emperor ruled from Rome, but officials were appointed to govern smaller areas, passing laws and raising taxes. Now, what you have to do is read through each impact and decide which one is that an impact of. So we're thinking about raising taxes. So that's money that people have to pay to the government, and the government use it on what they see fit. If they are a good government, that would be something that's benefiting people directly. So straight away, I can see here 1 definitely matches E, which says taxes were used to build public health facilities like sewers and bath houses. So straight away we can already see that under the Roman Empire, if this is an impact of those taxes, then that would definitely cause progression in medicine and health, because money was being used for health facilities like sewers and bathhouses. Now, once you've finished each impact and connected all 6 of those, you then have to have a look at the key features of life in England during the Middle Ages. Now, this is interesting because we're comparing what life was like under the Romans to life in the Middle Ages, 1250 to 1500. So this would be when the Roman Empire does not have a say in what's going on in England. And at this point, the people in charge, there is a government and there is a king, and there also is a Catholic Church. So what you'd have to do for each box here is read through it and then write down the analysis for each box. So a sentence starter that you'd be able to use, so it says it up here, is you'd start off with your this meant that. So you're thinking about what does each box, what would be a possible impact for life in the Middle Ages that had an impact on people's health. So if we look at the example here, a key feature of life in England was that around 90% of the population worked on the land and farms. This was physically demanding work all year round. Poor harvests and disease were common. So from this little piece of information, we can think about quite a few things regarding people's health. If it was physically demanding work, we have to assume here that people's health weren't taken care of. If diseases were common, we have to assume that people were getting ill. Poor harvest, we can infer that people were not being fed properly. So just like this example over here, we would start off with this meant that, and then if we just read this together, so this meant that hard back-breaking work meant that there was little time for learning. Poor harvest and disease meant that many people died of hunger and illness. So just like that, you would have a look at each one and write down the impact that would have on people's health. Now, once you finish that, you would create an image just to explain each one. So over here, we have a haystack just to symbolize that people were working on farm. Now, after you finish that, you just have to answer a few questions. So the questions here are, how much did ancient Rome influence life during the Middle Ages? So when we read through this information here, is there anything that continues from this time period here? So if we're to have a look, we can see that there are over here we have the Roman doctors who wrote many medical books, and they included the work of Greek doctors like Hippocrates, and you also have the famous Dr. Galen. So the Romans really valued Hippocrates and Galen's work. And if we see in our life in the Middle Ages, if we look at this one over here, the church controlled education, especially the universities where doctors were trained. Here they studied the ideas of Hippocrates and Galen. So straight away over here, we can think about that when we think about an influence, how did ancient Rome influence life during the Middle Ages? We can see that's definitely through the continuation of teaching Galen and Hippocrates. Now, the church specifically liked Galen because of his theory of design. Now, Galen's theory of design pretty much stated that the anatomy of the body was so detailed that it must have been created by a higher power. So while Galen didn't explicitly say there was a God or believe in a God in any way, a Christian God, the church still supported his science, which is why they would have allowed his work to be the basis of university training for doctors. You also need to think about what were the most important points to understand about the Middle Ages. So thinking about life in the Middle Ages, can you think of common themes here? Can you think about which kind of aspects of life would have a big sort of effect on people's health or people's knowledge? And then finally, which points do you think are the most important for understanding medicine and health during the Middle Ages? So which ones do you think can be a factor of medicine? Which one might have impacted how people perceive medicine? For example, we see a common theme here of the church being in control. They control education. They control people's lives. So therefore, they may possibly have an impact on how people see medicine in the Middle Ages. And then finally, just to finish us off for lesson 2, you have to use what you have learnt about life in the Middle Ages to write one big conclusion or several small conclusions to sum up how medieval life affected medicine and health. So we have some things that we can comment on here. We can comment on, so if we were to write mini conclusions, we can think about what life was like in terms of public health. Was there good sanitation? Was there systems in place to make sure cleanliness? Have we found out anything about what people believe about illness? Has the kind of figurehead of the church told us, is it obvious what they think about illness? Who controls education and learning? And what influences is that? And generally, what do you think the life expectancy of people was? Now, once you finish that, you have to write a lesson 2 summary. So the way this works is each lesson tends to have a summary, and in that summary, you'll just be given the main point of what you have learned in this lesson. So what you should come to after doing all the activities is the idea of the continuation of Galen and Hippocrates and their theories. We should also be understanding the idea and the dominance of the Catholic Church, and perhaps examples of how they dominate. And you should also be able to see how past the Roman Empire, so in the Middle Ages in England, sanitation and cleanliness and order really does have a regression here. So once you've completed each activity, you can then write down a summary based on that. Okay, thank you.